Okay, well, today we're going to talk about something I just prepared kind of on the fly this morning. Didn't have much time to prepare for this, so it may not be as thorough as I usually am regarding different topics of Scripture, but as I prayed about this morning, I believe the Lord led me to speak about this, so that's what we're going to talk about. Turn to Matthew 25. And we just finished Matthew. It seems kind of funny we're going back to it, but just for this morning, Lord willing, I'll be going back to this. And you see in the parable of the talents here, we know, and we talked about this passage, the parable of talents, Matthew 25, 14 through 30, that talents, I mean, literally speaking, talents in this situation is money, okay? But we know what it means is really the more broad terminology we give, broad definition we give to it as a society is all these abilities you have, all these skills you have that are given to you by God. God expects you to use them for His glory. But today I want to take a more literal approach to this parable and talk about money. And today, the title today is about handling God's money. Okay, so when we talk about talents here, like I said, in this specific parable, it's referring to anything God gives you, and included in that would be money, whatever money that God blesses you with. Okay, and we see that. Let's start in verse 19. It says, "After a long time, the Lord of those servants came and settled accounts with them." So they're called to give an account of what they did with what God gave them. And it says in verse 20, "So he who had received 5 talents came and brought 5 other talents, saying, 'Lord, you delivered to me 5 talents. Look, I have gained 5 more talents beside them.' His Lord said to him, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord.'" Now what we see here, the principle we see being worked out here, whether you're talking about the spiritual gifts God gives you, the natural talents and skills and ability God gives you, or we're even talking about money that God blesses you with. Because it doesn't belong to us. All of it belongs to God. The whole universe belongs to God. And so we're required to be good stewards over whatever God gives us, whether it be talents, skills, abilities, time, money. We're to be good stewards over all these things. You see that this one was a good steward, and the principle here is because he was faithful over a few things, I will make you ruler over many things. Now we know in this immediate context what that means is that when he enters the kingdom, God will give him authority and rulership over many things, okay? But in our present context right now, the principle still applies. In fact, let's finish reading through the 2 talents. Let's see what it says to him. Then we'll go to Luke here in a second. It says in verse 22, "He also who had received 2 talents came and said, 'Lord, you delivered to me 2 talents, less money, less ability, less skills.' But," he says, "look, I have gained 2 more talents beside them." He used it for God's glory and multiplied and added to it. His Lord said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of our Lord." And so we see the same principle here. You're faithful in few, ruler over many. Okay, let's go to Luke 16. Okay, Luke chapter 16. And this is the parable of the unjust steward. That's what the subtitle is in my Bible anyway. In verse 10, this is what I'm trying to get at here. It says, we talked about this last time in one of our recent teachings as well. It says, "He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. And he who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon," we talked about what that meant. It's just for comparing worldly mammon that's used for business purposes. "Who will commit to your trust true riches, the true riches? If you had not been faithful in what is another man's, who will give you what is your own?" Okay, so we see this principle, same principle being used here. You're faithful in these small things, which in this case is unrighteous mammon. Not unrighteous in the sense that's wicked or sinful, but it's used for worldly purposes, business purposes, secular jobs. If you're faithful in little, God will give you more. If you're faithful in this worldly things, the things that really don't matter in light of eternity, God will give you true riches. So you go from riches to true riches. God will bless you with, okay? And so we see these principles being worked out in Scripture, and this applies to what God blesses us with monetarily as well, whether it's through our job that we have, whether it's through ministry and someone donating, whether it's through a family member or a friend giving a gift to you for a birthday, for Christmas, whatever it may be. You know, some of our relatives are still celebrating things, whether we do or not, so they'll still give gifts sometimes for these things. And so we're called to be faithful in these things. And if we're faithful in these things, God will commit to us true riches. But if we're not faithful in those things, how can we expect God to commit to our trust true riches, the things that really matter, things that will impact someone's eternity or even our own eternity? Okay? And if you aren't faithful in someone else's stuff, why would God give you your own stuff? Okay? I like a saying Brother Tracy uses. If I'm using someone else's possessions, I'm going to treat that better than I even treat my own stuff, because it doesn't belong to me. I don't own it. It belongs to somebody else. Whether it's borrowing a lawnmower or borrowing a tool, or, I'm speaking from the man's perspective here. If you're borrowing, sewing stuff, or maybe you borrowed some eggs and you have to pay them back, whatever it may be. I mean, sometimes people don't really expect anything back, but when you're borrowing anything from somebody, you should treat it better than you treat your own stuff. I think that's a good principle to use. That Brother Tracy is a saying he's used many times. But if you're not faithful in someone else's stuff, why would God give you your own stuff? So what I want to talk about at this point, just some practical stuff. I'm going to use the whiteboard here today, and I'm going to put it up here on my lap so you guys can see it a little bit better. It's kind of back there in the corner. I'm going to talk about some practical stuff today, and the first thing I want to talk about is budgeting. Now, this stuff is not laid out in the Scripture, okay, but I think it's very practical, things I've been putting to use myself for years and years and years, okay? So I'm going to give you a scenario that doesn't reflect anyone I know, myself or anybody else, but I'm going to give you a scenario that may help you as far as being a good steward over unrighteous mammon, being a good steward over what God's blessed you with, so you can be committed to your trust, true riches. Some of you may be looking to be involved in church leadership in the future. Well, you need to be committed as trustworthy, commended as trustworthy in these things first, before God will commit to your trust, true riches. So let's talk about budget for a second here. Okay, budgeting. All right. When I was young, I wasn't very good with money. Okay. A lot of times I would spend money on things I didn't need, and I didn't have the money for it. I'd rack up a lot of debt. I didn't budget. Okay, so let's just say someone makes, let's just give a number here, $2,000 a month, a whole household. If it's the husband's salary only, or maybe the wife is bringing some money in as well, let's just say their budget each month, what they have as an intake, what they have coming into the household, is $2,000 a month. Okay, your personal income or intake may be less than that, maybe more than that. People are listening on the camera as well, maybe more or less than that. But let's just say, this is giving a round number, $2,000 a month. Now let's say that your rent, so that's intake, okay? That's intake, that's what's coming in, all the money coming in every month on average. At the end of the year, you had $24,000 that came in, but this is intake over the whole, average over the whole year. And so this is basically what you have coming in. Now let's say your rent is $500 a month, okay? Yours may be more or less than that, okay? So that's going out. And then let's say your electricity is $150 a month, okay? $150 a month for electricity, okay? And then let's say your water bill is $25 a month. Yours might be more or less than that, okay? And let's say your gas is, for your car, let's say it's $100 a month, okay? And let's say your food bill, you don't have a very big family yet, let's say it's $250 a month, Okay? As you can see, it's adding up pretty quickly. All right? You see that right now you have 250 plus 2 is 500 plus 500,000 plus 25 is $1,025 so far. Okay? So you're doing okay. Right now you have $975 left over as of right now. This is just a very small amount of things. Let's say you have a cell phone, and the cell phone is $50 a month. Okay? And then you have your internet, and that's $50 a month. Okay? And let's see, what else is there? Then there's car insurance. Let's say that's $100 a month. Okay?
Garbage.
Well, yep, garbage. That can cost something too. Let's say the garbage and sewage and all that stuff is another $25 a month. Okay? You have lots of garbage. You paper plates a lot. Okay, so what we have so far is 500, 650, 675, 775, 825, 1,025, plus 25 is 1,050, plus 200 more is $1,250. Okay, so you're still doing pretty good. You still have $750 left over every month to be able to use whatever way the Lord would lead you to use it for. Anything else you can think of that might be?
Did you already put the grocery bill in there?
Grocery bill is $250 a month.
Okay, you got that.
Got that on there. What's that?
Yeah,
Well, it's just a smaller family. Could be higher than that. Oh, we can change it to something else. We can change it to $500 a month. I mean, our grocery bill is pretty high. I don't know exactly what the number is, but it's pretty high. Of course, we're buying a lot of organic stuff, so it's a pretty high number. But so $2,000 a month intake, and this is all just figures here. Okay. Let's see, what else could there be? Let's say clothing. You gotta budget for clothing, because if you end up walking over here on a Sunday morning to bring stuff over here and you end up finding a hole in your shoe and your sock starts getting wet from the bottom up, like what happened to me this morning. You have to have money to spend for shoes and for clothes. I don't know what happened to it. I don't know how it happened. Just walking back home this morning after I brought some food over here, I'm like, why is my sock getting wet from the bottom up? I'm just walking over here, and these shoes, the leather shoes, so even from the top to the bottom, it wouldn't get wet because of the snow and stuff. And I'm like, what is going on? So I took my shoe off. There's a big hole right there in the middle of my shoe. I have no idea how it got there. I saw no signs of this. So you got to be able to do that. So let's just say you're spending $100 a month, and even if you're not spending it each month, you're budgeting for that. So you put that money aside for that. So one month you may only spend $25. The next month you may spend $200 on clothes. But you're putting this money aside. Some people may have a cable bill. We don't have a cable bill. Maybe you have a regular phone bill. Let's say that's $50 a month, including long distance and stuff like that. Okay? So you had another $50 a month for that. What did you want to add, Malachi?
Like computers, internet.
Well, I already got that on there, so it's $50 a month.
You're putting up like gasoline, fuel for your vehicle?
Yep, that was $100 a month. Let's just say you have a car payment too. Okay, that can be a big one for some people. Let's say that's $200 a month. That's actually I've had payments of $400 a month before for a credit card bill. Yeah, you could have a credit card bill. Loans. Okay, let's say you have school loans. Let's say those are $200 a month. Okay. Okay, let's add this up now. Okay, so I know we had 1,025 here, 1,050, 1,150, 1,250, 1,350, 1,550, 1,750, $1,800. Okay. Okay, so let's just put that over here. We'll make that another $100 a month. Diapers, wipes. So let's just say $100 a month. So that's $1,900. So you see how this can add up.
$100 left over.
You got $100 left over. The problem is, friends, a lot of people do not sit down and write this out. If you haven't done it, I would encourage you to do it. And if your outtake, what's going out, all this right here, if that's more than this is right here, the intake, you got a problem. And you really only have one solution. That solution is, well, two solutions. Either you can cut back on this, or you can make this go higher. Those are your only two options, okay? And we know the Bible says if a man does not work, he shall not eat. So when it comes to intake, it should always go above outtake. Now, there's always this temptation. Maybe you're walking down Walmart and you see something that you really like, you really want it. Maybe it's a nice new watch, okay? Or maybe it's some kind of material that you just have to have because it's on sale. Or maybe it's some kind of new computer. Your computer's breaking down. You need a new computer. You got to have it. Or some kind of new gadget like an iPad or some kind of smartphone. It's a new smartphone. Only $100. I can upgrade my account and get 100. You know, whatever it may be, there's going to be temptations along the way for you to engage in, for you to not engage in delayed gratification. Okay. Delayed gratification simply means that you're waiting. You're not going to gratify what you're wanting or what you're desiring, what you think you may need. Oftentimes you'll find children, they'll say, well, I need that. But the question, they really don't need it, they just want it. And you can find yourself doing that too, thinking you need something when you really don't need something. Maybe there's that one dog that you've always wanted. You know, we've been considering possibly getting a dog lately, but you know, it's going to be a certain kind of dog, and I'm not going to overextend myself to buy a dog. You know, even if I see one for the best price in the world, you know, if I don't have the money for it, I don't have the money for it. That's all there is to it. Or maybe you have a new idea. This is speaking about myself. Maybe you have a new idea for a gospel tract. It's a really good idea, and you really want to create it, but you don't have the money to get it started. You know, you have to delay yourself, delayed gratification. And so when we talk about intake and outtake, they must be different. So that someone only has $100 left a month, but they're spending $200 a month. Now they have credit card debt, or maybe they have gas card debt, or maybe they don't pay a bill. Maybe they don't pay their school bill 1 month, and now it's racking up interest in that. Or maybe they don't pay their cell phone bill 1 month, and then that gets cut off. Or maybe they don't pay their internet bill 1 month, and then that gets cut off. You know, of course, you can figure out that some of the things in here won't be needs. You know, who says you have to have internet service? Who says you have to have phone service? Who said you have to have cell phone service? Some things you have to have. You got to have a car if you can get to work. You got to pay for gas to get there and back. You got to eat. But maybe some of the things you're buying, maybe instead of buying that steak, you buy some of that beef top round instead. You know, or you buy some bologna. Yeah, you buy some bologna. You know, maybe you buy some ramen noodles instead of buying the high-end stuff. Or maybe you just eat less. You know, that's the answer too. I know some of my children, they're beginning to eat more and more. I mean, Malachi can out-eat me in pancakes any day. And if we were really struggling for money, I'd make him cut back, because he doesn't have to have 8 pancakes every time he eats pancakes. He doesn't have to eat however many he eats, 6 to 8 pancakes. He doesn't have to eat that many pancakes. You know, there's been times when we as a family, when we were struggling for financially, we only ate 2 meals a day. We eat a late breakfast and eat an early dinner. And sometimes we eat like a little snack for lunch, and that's it. We weren't eating 3 meals. You know, so there's some things you can cut back on. Maybe instead of eating lunch, you can fast for lunch. You know, spend some time with the Lord in prayer. So these are some of the things you need to be considering when it comes to budgeting your money, because we all want to be faithful in these things to God. We all want to be blessed with spiritual riches, I think, whether we're going to become a part of official church leadership or not. But we need to handle this is God's money. Not your money, not my money. It's God's money. He's allowing you to borrow it. And like I said before, what was the saying? We said that if something doesn't belong to you, you treat it better than you do your own stuff. And in this case, it all belongs to God. You should treat it as if it belongs to God. Okay? Now, with all this right here, we have $100 left a month, and we haven't even gotten to the point where we're going to give to the Lord's work yet. Haven't even gotten to that point yet. And so the goal when it comes to when we had money we had every month, the goal, of course, is to further God's kingdom, not to further our kingdom here on earth. Because Matthew 6:19 says, do not store up yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and thieves break in and steal, but store yourself treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroy and thieves do not break in and steal. Okay, so that's what we should be storing up our treasures. So a lot of this, if we only have $100 left over, that's probably a problem. I would say we should have we should probably have a couple hundred at least left over to be able to give to the Lord's work, whatever the Lord would lead you to give, giving generously, not giving compulsively or because you're being forced to give it, because you want to give out of the generosity of your heart. You realize God has given you so much and you want to further his kingdom on earth, and so you're going to give as much as you can to his work. Maybe find a missionary to give to, find an evangelist to give to Refining Fire Fellowship. Eventually we're going to have to build a building. Eventually. And the American Bible Challenge that we were hoping and praying was going to work for us didn't work out. What do you know? We probably should have been expecting that. Not that I was putting my hope in anything like that, but it would have been nice to be able to get on the show, and the building would have been taken care of. We would have won that show. But we're going to have to do it the hard way, I think. And we should at least plan to do it the hard way. Now, the Lord may bless us some other way, with money for a building, but we're going to have to, bust out of this basement eventually and have a bigger area to meet in. So these are things we need to be thinking about. And there's also savings. Many of you in here, in fact, no one in here owns you kind of owned your own house, I guess, but you don't actually own it yet. I guess you're still making payments on it, but it's an RV. None of us in here own our own house yet. And so if you want to own a house, generally speaking, most times, you have to have a down payment. And in order to have a down payment, you have to save up for it. Let's say you want to buy a house. Let's just say it's $80,000, okay? Let's say it's $80,000. Now, that's pretty inexpensive for a normal house. Now, if you're going to buy a mobile home, it'd probably be a lot cheaper than that. But let's do a regular house, $80,000. Typically, a loan agency wants 10% down. That's $8,000. Well, $8,000 would take a long time to save up. I mean, if you save $80 a month, okay, it'll take 100 months to do that. That's 8 years to save up $8,000. And I know that number seems big, but the time is to get starting. Make little goals for yourself. Begin to save up money for it. Let's say it's $30,000. Let's say you're going for a mobile home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, double wide mobile home. And that's including the land, which is a very inexpensive price, $30,000. You have to be a used one, of course. Couldn't be a new one. 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Maybe it's 1,300, 1,400 square feet. Decent size for me, someone who has 3 or 4 children. $30,000, you need 10% down for that. That's $3,000 down. Okay? $3,000. Let's say you save $100 a month. That'll take 30 months. 30 months is 2.5 years. So it takes time to save up that money. Okay, so it's good to begin working on these savings things. If you have something you're thinking about in the long term, the future, you shouldn't just sit back and think, well, I'll let God take care of it. Well, God will take care of it, but oftentimes take care of it through your discipline, through your obedience to do what needs to be done in order for you to have what he wants you to have in the future. We shouldn't just sit back and say, well, God's going to take care of it and expect it to just fall in your lap. We need to do the hard work of getting to the budget, looking at these things, looking at our intake, looking at our outtake, comparing the two. Am I going above and beyond? If so, I need to increase this or lower this, or maybe do both. It'd be good to do both, and you might have a lot of extra money every month, and you can save up a lot of money. Instead of, going to Walmart and just having that, let's say you had $500 a month extra, and you're spending $200 of it on just nothingness. That's $200 a month you could be saving. That's $2,400 a year. That's almost $5,000 over 2 years. Now, if you have nothing to save up for, I'm not encouraging you to store up treasures on earth so you can just store it up and say, I have money in my pocket. But I can think most of us probably have something to save for. Me and Angel have to save for the front edition. Now we have to save for a back edition. Hopefully we can get done in a year or two. Because our family is growing. We have 6 children and a house that's less than 1,200 square feet. And so that's a small house for our size, not just the bedrooms, but the living area. Just like we're getting crowded in. We're always trying to find ways to clear up space. Like we put the TV on the wall now. And we put the DVD player up on a shelf on the wall. So we have the big old ugly entertainment center out of there now. So you have a little, that gives you maybe 3 feet by 1 foot more space, but that's a lot of space for someone who's a big family like us. And so you need to be thinking about these things. So whatever you're trying to save for, whatever you want to give towards, maybe the Lord is calling upon you to give to someone or to something to help somebody. He's expecting you to do it, but because you're not budgeting properly, looking at this and taking it seriously instead of blowing money on nothingness, you're not able to give and save like you're supposed to. What do you want to say, Brother Tracy?
I was going to say, you know, even if you don't have anything specifically to save up money for, it is actually wise to have an emergency fund, because we all have these unexpected things that happen, and we usually have no way of dealing with it.
Right.
But if we had, like, say, $2,000 in an emergency fund, when these things come up, we'll at least have something to deal with it.
Good point. Yeah, I was going to get to that next, about this emergency fund that Malachi breaks his arm. You know, if it wasn't for Medicaid, I wouldn't be able to pay for that. And to be honest, I don't like using Medicaid. I don't want the government to have anything to do with my children. I didn't have the money to pay for that, but we should be able to save up enough to have an emergency fund, and the general rule of practice is whatever 2 months worth of expenses is, that's how much you have put aside. So if you lose your job, hopefully within 2 months, you can find another job, and you're back to the right income, and you can rebuild up your emergency fund again, so in case it happens again. So that's good in case car breaks down. New tires in the car is expensive these days, especially for my 13 passenger van. I'm going to have to buy new tires for that soon. It's going to be expensive. I know it is. Those tires are getting worn out, and I'll probably wait till right before next winter, because I'm not worried about slipping around in the summer and the spring. These are things we have to plan for. No one plans for a water heater breaking down. No one plans for a roof leak. No one plans for, you don't think about, well, my car is going to break down this year. You don't know what's going to happen. So you need to plan for it ahead of time so you are prepared. Okay, so it's a very good point, brothers. To have that emergency fund put aside, so if these things happen, you're ready. Yes, Malachi.
Another one is just in case your house gets on fire too.
Yeah, generally, if your house gets on fire, though, you have insurance, which pays for that. Yep. That gives you money for, you're supposed to have house insurance around here, so hopefully, you guys don't have to worry. You're renting, so you don't have to worry about that. And you have your own. If yours burnt down, do you have insurance on it?
No.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing for you to think about. So we have insurance in ours that covers not only our house, but the contents within our house. So we would be reimbursed. Of course, it'd be difficult. You can't replace pictures and things like that are irreplaceable, but there's certain things like computers and beds and furniture and refrigerators. That stuff need to be recovered, and so we have insurance for those kind of things. Another thing is, because we're on that topic of insurance, is if you're a husband and you have a family to take care of and you don't have life insurance, I would encourage you to get it. Okay, I would really, because if I die, my wife has no way of taking care of herself. She has no way of providing for herself. If you die today, die tomorrow, how's your wife, how's your family going to take care of themselves? Are they going to have to go out and get a job and be a single mom? Or be single by themselves? Or are they going to have a way to provide for themselves? I really, the amount I put on myself is probably not even enough. It'd pay for the house, it'd pay for some debt we have, and she'd probably be able to live off it for, 4 or 5 years, and hopefully she'd keep the gospel track stuff going. But these are things you need to think about. And my life insurance policy cost me, I think, $23 a month. And it's good for like 10, 20 years. After the 10, 20 years up, I have to get a physical done again to make sure I'm still in good shape. If I have cancer or something like that, they're not going to insure me again. But make sure I'm still in good shape, and then they'll give me another term policy of 10 years, to make sure my wife and children are taken care of in case something happens to me. Because I want them to make sure, I don't want her to have to rush out and get another husband and make a rash decision in doing that because she can't provide for herself. I want her to be able to take her time, or maybe if she doesn't want to, never get married again. Maybe she doesn't want to get married again if something were to happen to me. And if something happens to her, I have an insurance policy on her as well, not as much as mine because I'm the main provider, but it would help me, as I let the Lord lead me in looking for another mate if something were to happen to her.
I was going to say that's even more important for us that go out and open air preach, because that is very dangerous. We don't know what's going to happen when we go out there.
Right.
So anything could happen, so it's important to have that.
Yeah, it's a good thing that these insurance policies have not caught on to that yet, because if they would have known that I was an open-air preacher at that point in time and known how dangerous it was, they probably would jack up my insurance like 3 times the price it is now. If they were to just look at my one video from Belshire, I got pushed, they probably would jack up my insurance rate really expensive. And so it's good to have insurance as the man of the household is providing for his family. And it's good to have that emergency fund. Okay, so now let's talk about. We talked about delayed gratification for a second. Delayed gratification simply means that if you see something that you want, you're not going to impulsively take the money in your pocket just because you have it and buy it. You're going to think about it. You're reasonable about it. You might even pray about it, depending on how big a purchase it is. But I tell you what, when I was growing up, my uncles used to make fun of me. They used to, if I got money for my birthday, or, one year, my ninth grade year, I didn't do very good in school. I had like a 2.2 GPA, and then all my uncles, I had 5 uncles, they all bet me and said, well, if you can get an honor roll all year, 3.0 or above, we'll give you so much money. And I did it, and they all owed me money. And so it was like $50 a pop. So I got like $250. I was like 10th grader, $250. That's a lot of money for me. But I had this thing, this disease, I call it. Of course, it's a choice, not really a disease, of burning a hole in my pocket. That sort of thing. That if I have money in my pocket, I just got to burn a hole and fall out. It's got to be used right away. No, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be used right away. And if it does, maybe you should use it for the Lord's work instead of buying some new gadget or something like that. So beware of that. And of course, when it comes to budgeting, we want to be frugal and we want to live simply. And so we don't want to live like the world does. We want to live frugally and simply, okay? And think about our decisions with our money as far as how we're going to spend, especially big decisions like car, house, expensive electronics like a computer. We want to think about these things before we just impulsively buy them just because we have the money. Maybe God gave you that money not to buy those things, but to give to someone who needs it overseas, or someone who's struggling financially, who has no way of providing for themselves. Maybe that's the way God wants. So we always need to think about those things before we spend our money. Okay, now I want to talk about debt. Okay, I'm going to put this down over here. Actually, I'll just keep it up there. You can look at it if you want to anymore. But I just wanted to kind of give you a visual of this because it's a lot easier to picture these things if you get a visual. If you haven't done this budgeting thing yet, I would encourage you to do it as soon as you're able to. Okay, now I want to talk about debt. Okay, let's turn to Romans 13. Romans chapter 13. Okay, verse 7 is beginning talking about giving taxes to the government. It says, render therefore to all their due, talking about the government, taxes to whom taxes are due, customs to whom customs, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. Verse 8, owe no one anything except to love one another, for he who loves another has fulfilled the law. So the goal of when it comes to financial things, to have no debts at all. Okay, now we can't go back and erase the bad decisions we've made, when it comes to debt. So this is not about beating yourself up if you have debt or, thinking you can change the past, but it is about changing the future. If you have racked up debt in the past, then I would encourage you not to do it again, not to rack up debt again. Now, I would say this. I think personally, there's a difference between good debt and bad debt. Okay, now there's very few things that qualify for a good debt, in my opinion. A house would be one of them, but not always. Good debt, let me define it for you, is debt you incur that if something were to happen in your life, you could sell it right away and pay off all the expenses of what it cost. Okay? A lot of times a house can qualify. If you buy a house for $80,000 and you put $8,000 down on it, and a year later something happens and you have to leave, surely if you just bought it for $80,000, you can sell it for $72,000. But even then, we know the market around certain areas is not very good. We've seen houses for sale on this road for years that don't sell. And so even with that, you need to be very careful. Another example I would think of good debt, something I've done many times in my life, is when I know I'm going to have the money sooner in the future, or I have enough money every month, you can buy something that's something called same as cash. Okay? 6 months same as cash, or 12 months same as cash. This past summer, I had a lawnmower that was junk. I mean, it was stopping every 5 seconds. I couldn't figure out how to fix it, and it would take forever for me to mow my lawn. And so I decided to go to Lowe's. And the lawnmower I wanted to get was a little expensive. I didn't have the money for it on the spot, but I knew I could pay it off in 3 months, no problem. Lowe's offered me a Lowe's card, and they said, if you spend this much money on something, we'll give it to you for 6 months, same as cash. Okay? As I was saying, there's what I did with Lowe's. I was able to purchase that lawnmower so I can mow my lawn properly and get it done quickly because my time is precious to me. And I didn't have all the cash right then, but they offered me a deal that if I spent so much money, they'd give me 6 months same as cash. What that means is for 6 months, you have that much time to pay it off, and you'll get charged no interest at all. Okay? I've done that with Dell when I've bought computers because I work on computers basically all day when I'm at home. And I do web design, I do graphic design, all different kinds of things, video editing. So I have to have a good computer in order to do my work. And so I've done it with Dell several times, but I've always paid it off in that time frame where I didn't have to pay any interest at all on it. And so I would consider that a good debt, as long as you know you're going to have that money to pay it off before that time frame runs out. In the past, I've done it with furniture as well. I lived in Louisiana. I think I did that a couple times with furniture. And so no interest is good. That's great. In fact, if Christian brothers and sisters loan to each other, that's the way it should be. No interest. You know, if I have $5,000 in my savings account, which I don't, but if I did have it, and a brother or sister really needed it, and I thought they were reliable, they would pay it back on time, and we lay out the terms for it, I wouldn't charge any interest for it. That's the way you're supposed to deal with your brother or sister in Christ. Okay? So I think there's such thing as good debt and bad debt, but most debt, even sometimes house debt, qualifies as bad debt in my opinion. Okay? Because you're getting charged interest, lots of interest. I mean, even if you are able to sell your house and pay it off right away, most houses, if you pay them over 30 years, if you paid $80,000, the sale price is $80,000, you end up paying $240,000 for after 30 years of paying on it. So that's not good. So the ideal, of course, is to be able to pay it with cash, or at least if you put $8,000 down and have $70,000 left to pay on it, then at least you're maybe doubling your payment. If your payment's only $400 a month, you double it to $800 a month, because then you get it paid in, I think, 10 years instead of 30 years, which greatly lowers the final price you pay total for that house. Credit card debt is horrible. I used to be really bad with this. I used to have a credit card I owed $10,000 on. But the Lord led me out of that. Thank God I don't ever have credit cards anymore. I don't even play around with them. So credit cards, this one time, I had this credit card debt. I was paying on it faithfully every month. And one month, I forgot to make a payment on it. And I forgot the day after it was due. And it didn't give me any grace. Sometimes credit cards will give you some grace with that. They didn't give me any grace, and it doubled my payment overnight because my interest went from 5% to 29%. Because they'll have this in disclaimers written in the contracts that if you are late on a payment or you don't make your payments on time, they jack up the interest rate just like that. And now your payment is so big you can't even pay for it. So credit card debt, gas card debt, Lowe's card debt, those things are not good if you're paying interest on them. You don't want that kind of debt. I've known people who maybe on a Friday night, they don't have the cash for it. Maybe they have that just like a couple days before payday, maybe. Because people usually run out of money. Typically, people run out of money right towards the end of the month, right before payday. And I want a pizza tonight. I don't feel like cooking tonight. And so they order a pizza on their credit card. And maybe they paid $25, $30 for all the pizza they bought. But they end up paying $60 for that same pizza because of the interest they get charged for it. Would you really pay $60 for that pizza? Of course not. So you shouldn't be racking it up on a credit card. Car loans as well. If you buy a car used, you might not have this problem. But if you buy a car new for $10,000, which you're not going to find a new car for $10,000 today, but let's just say $10,000, that car drops like that as soon as you drive off the lot. It's no longer new. You're better off buying a used car. You're better off running your current car into the ground until you can't drive it anywhere anymore, saving up your money as much as you can, and then whatever you have, let's say over a year, it's $2,000. Well, that's not enough to get a good car. Well, so what? Go buy another car that costs $2,000 and run that one into the ground. And maybe that lasts 4 years. Those 4 years, you save up $5,000. Now you got a $5,000 car. So you're kind of moving up the ladder, so to speak, when it comes to the quality of car you're driving, but you're never paying any interest. If the car interest is 10%, you might end up paying double the price of your car by the time you're paying it off 4 or 5 years later. Why wouldn't you just save up instead, drive your junk car? One time, me and Angela, we decided we weren't going to go into car debt anymore. because we used to do it all the time. I had a $400 a month payment at one point in time. That's a lot. That's more than I pay for a mortgage now. And so $400 a month, I wrecked that car, and I got out from under it. I'll tell that story different now. It's the hand of the Lord, I think. But we didn't have any money. We had like maybe $500, $700, I think, something like that. And we went out and buy this Ford Escort wagon for $350. Put $200 into it. It was a piece of junk, man. But it was filthy too. And we had to clean it, and clean it. Took our work to clean it, but it was worth it. And that car lasted for what, 3 or 4 months or something like that. And then we were able to save some money at that point in time and get a Pontiac Bonneville. Yeah, and we sold it for what we paid for it. And so we, these are kind of things you need to think about when it comes to how you're going to use God's money. You know, using God's money properly when it comes to debt, good debt and bad debt, and not going into debt at all, which is the ideal. I mean, ideally, if you can buy everything with cash, that's the way to go. And if you find you're not able to save up for things, you need to either increase the intake, decrease the outtake, or do both. Well, those are your only options. Okay, unless you want to go into debt, which I don't think is proper. Let's look at Psalm 37:1. This verse is in relation to debt. I think we've all borrowed at some point in time in our lives. And Psalm 37:21 says, the wicked borrows and does not repay, but the righteous shows mercy and gives. You see the difference here? We don't want to be in the category of the wicked. We don't want to borrow and not repay. Okay? We want to be the righteous, the ones who have enough to give. Instead of taking and racking up interest and wasting your money, we give instead, which is an act of mercy. Okay? And of course, we give without expecting in return. Unless it's some kind of, purchase of a property or something like that. You know, there's different, there's exceptions to that. Proverbs 22:7. So we don't want to be like the wicked. We want to pay back. And we want to pay back as soon as we can. In fact, I would even encourage you, unless the Lord is leading you in a different direction, as a general rule, if you have debt to pay, you should be working on that before you even give to the Lord's work. You should be working that until it's gone. And then once that's gone, then you're able to give. You're able to give as much as you can because you have more freedom now. You know, if you are paying, let's say you're paying on a car $200 a month, and you finally gets paid off. Now you have $200 a month that you didn't have before. Now what can you do with that? And if you double your payments on that and get it paid off in half the time, now you have even more money left over every month, even quicker time than you did before. Okay, so Proverbs 22 and verse 7. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Debt is bondage. You're in bond. It doesn't give you freedom to do what maybe the Lord would have you to do. Maybe the Lord would have you to be a missionary, maybe just for a week and go to Ireland. But because you have these debts, you have to pay them because you don't want to be part of the wicked who we just read about. It's now you're in bondage to these things. Whereas if you didn't have any, can you imagine having no debt at all? If you had no debt at all, now you have more freedom. Nothing's tying you down. You know? You have less, you have these outtake right here is going to be a lot less when you have no debt. And so you can plan for that. But when it comes to having debt, you are, the borrower is servant to the lender. He or she has power over you because of the money you owe him or her. And so we want to make sure that if we get any debt at all, that it's good debt, and there's very little that actually qualifies as good debt in my opinion. Very little. And of course the ideal is to never go into debt for anything. Never. To always pay with cash. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way God made it to be. And a good philosophy to have is if I can't buy it with cash, I'm not going to have it. That's all there is to it. If I don't have the money for it, I'm not going to buy it. That's all there is to it. And if you think the Lord is speaking to you to buy something that you don't have the money for, I would submit to you it's probably not God speaking to you. because God doesn't usually do those things. Okay? Can he? Yeah, I think he can, but it's not a usual thing for him. Okay? Sometimes he might have you step out in faith and do things like that, but I'd say it's a very rare occurrence. Generally speaking, he works within these principles. And so hopefully this is beneficial for you, not only for you, but for those who are listening on camera, to budget your money out, to use the money God's blessed you with properly, to use it for his glory, to be out from under bondage, to get debt paid off and not rack it up anymore, and to use your money wisely. Even children. I haven't even touched on that yet, but it's teaching your children. If the first thing your children do when they get a birthday present from Mimi and Pop Pop, or they get some kind of money in the mail for whatever kind of holiday is going on because they want to give money, if the first thing you teach them is, well, let's go to the store and buy a toy with it, that's not a good principle to teach them. You should teach them, well, let's wait. You have enough toys. Why do you need another toy? Why not instead use it for something else? Why not give to the Lord, or give it to someone who needs it? And it's never too early to start teaching them that. Even if they're 3 years old like Eli is. It's never too young to start teaching them those things. I mean, I would have loved if my parents would have taught me these things that I've talked about in the last 45 minutes or so. Would have loved it. They would have saved me a lot of trouble and a lot of pain. I know Angela's parents taught her that when she was growing up, taught her to buy stuff with cash. When they wanted a car, they went to the auction in Michigan, the car auction, and bought a car. They bought a mechanic with them and bought a car for cash. And they saved up for it. Unfortunately, I was not taught that. So Angela came into the marriage with me, and I had debt, and I didn't manage money properly at first. Was never taught to manage money properly, and we had lots of problems with money early on in our marriage. And that's one of the main things that can really hurt a marriage is money problems. One of the main things. So you don't want that. You don't want money problems. You want to handle it properly. And if you have to go with nothing but food, shelter, and clothing, then so be it. You have to go out ever buying another DVD, ever buying a TV, ever buying another computer, ever having internet access, ever having a phone line or a cell phone. If you have to go without those things because your intake is so low, then so be it. That's what you need to do. There's nothing wrong with that. I know in this world and American society, it's seen as kind of an anomaly to have those things. But we're the anomaly. America is the anomaly when it comes to those things. We're the unusual ones. Most people in the world do not have cell phones, do not have computers, do not have internet access, do not have TVs, do not have entertainment, do not have nice things in their house, do not have designer clothes or nice clothes. Lots of people in the world only have 1 or 2 changes of clothes. I'm not saying you need to do that, but I'm saying if it has to happen that way, then do it. Do what God wants you to do with the money he blesses you with, not what the world tells you or what your parents have raised you as, but as God wants to raise you as. All right, does anyone have any questions about what we talked about today? That's about all I have for you, I think.
Say like if somebody has so much debt racked up,
Mm-hmm.
would you say filing for bankruptcy would be okay, or if they couldn't pay it back at all?
Yeah, well, bankruptcy is a very difficult thing. It should be used as a last resort. I mean, if you absolutely cannot pay it back, then I would say that. But I mean, I would ask you, if whoever this person is who's thinking about this, I would ask them, have you been working hard? Some people have to work 2 or 3 jobs. It takes that maybe at the beginning. It doesn't happen for a long time. Some people have to work a couple of jobs, and they do not much else besides work and spend a little time with their family. And that's all they can do because of the debt they've incurred. So people have to do that. And once the debt gets paid off, they can cut back to 1 job or whatever it may be. But I think a lot of people, they use bankruptcy as a crutch. They don't do it as a last case scenario or as a last chance thing. They do it as, well, I don't feel like paying this off. so I'm gonna fill out for bankruptcy. And keep in mind, bankruptcy does not cover car debt. If you have a car you owe on, and you file for bankruptcy, you lose that car. Okay? If you have a house that you're including in it, you lose that house. Okay? It does not cover school bills. It does cover credit card debt. Okay? So those are the things it covers. And so it must be used as a last resort. I would say that. And if someone's considering that, they need to get some counsel and sit down and talk to some people who've been dealing with money for a long time and get their advice on it. That's what I would recommend in those situations. But yeah, I think there are viable reasons to do that. I mean, maybe if a guy gets injured on a job, and the job doesn't give him workman's comp, where they find some kind of loophole and they give it to him, and he's not able to work, and he has debt that he simply cannot pay for, and his wife can't work. Maybe they have lots of children at home. In those situations, I would say that's a viable, and that's what it's there for. That's what it's supposed to be there for. And you see this in the scripture too. I mean, after 7 years, the debt was wiped out every 7 years. And that's what you see in bankruptcy, is that after 7 years it comes off your record. But know this, if you file for bankruptcy and you plan on using credit in the future, buying a house, don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. Because bankruptcy will ruin your credit. It'll ruin your credit. You're not trustworthy, because for all people know who you're trying to get money from to buy a car or buy a house, whatever it may be, if you're going to do that, they're going to say, well, you filed bankruptcy a couple of years ago, 5 years, in 5 years, it'll be off your record, but who's to say you won't do it again? And then we're out of luck. So you're not trustworthy, not seen as trustworthy when it comes to those things. And there are people who when they want to build up their credit, they might buy like a Lowe's car like we did and pay it off right away, not paying any interest. They might buy a gas card and pay on it every month and never let interest hit it. They might buy their groceries with their credit card, but pay it off as soon as they get home, whatever the amount was, pay it off. And in doing so, they're building credit, and it helps to get their credit score up. But let's face it, we shouldn't have to worry about a credit score, because we should be buying stuff with cash anyway. But there are some, if you are planning to need that in the future, and it's not a bad thing to buy a house with a loan, as long as it qualifies as that good debt I was talking about before, then you're going to need that. You're going to need a good credit score. And so you're going to need to play the world's game on this credit score nonsense. You need to play their game, and you're going to need to do what it takes to get your credit score up there. It's something as easy as having some kind of payment like that at Lowe's or a gas card, and they'll typically give you, just about anyone, like a $300 credit on a gas card or a Lowe's card. And I mean, if you're paying for $50 in gas on one trip and you pay that right off, you're never using that much anyway. And eventually they might extend your credit. I've bought in so many computers from Dell in the 6-12 months same as cash thing. They've extended my credit crazy amounts that I'll never use. I'll never even think about using, because I keep paying it off. I'm reliable in their opinion, so I pay it off on time. They extend my credit and make it higher. Lowe's did the same thing, but I'm not going to use it. I have no intentions of ever using it. But if I ever have to get credit for something, I have it there waiting for me. I have a good credit score. I can get something, a loan, if I have to. And so bankruptcy should be a last resort. But you need to know the ramifications of it. If someone is considering that it will affect your credit. Most people won't give you anything for 2 years at least. On small purchases, like you want to buy a $2,000 car, they won't give it to you for 2 years. And even after 2 years, you have to show that some other way you're building your credit in some way, using something else, before they'll give you anything. And so you'll ruin your credit. And you need to be aware of laziness for this person who considers laziness, or just not feeling like paying it off, or not wanting to pay it off. You need to be aware of those things. There are temptations to give into when it comes to these. It's an easy out to not have to pay your debt. It's an easy out. It should never be used as that, as an easy out. What are you going to say, brother?
I was just going to add to what you're saying is the scripture we just read is the wicked will borrow and not repay.
Mm-hmm.
The bankruptcy would have to be such an extreme case of, like you said, being physically unable.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're physically able, just because a loan goes in default doesn't mean your world's going to fall apart. It just means your credit score is ruined and you can't take out any more loans, which would be a good thing.
Uh-huh.
So say if you could take out bankruptcy, but you're still able to work, it might be a better idea not to take the bankruptcy, let the loan go default, and then take care of that as you can in the future. That actually might be a better way to go, because then you still pay it back.
Yeah.
Even if it takes longer to pay it back, the Bible says that we're supposed to pay it back.
Yeah.
So in any way possible within our means, we should always pay it back, even if it makes us look bad.
Yeah.
But if it comes to a situation like, say my legs get chopped off and I'm handicapped and now I can't work, and like you said, I have no workman's comp, no way of taking care of myself, that would be a situation where bankruptcy might be possible.
And even that situation, if say the hospital bills were so high,
Right.
and you were never going to be able. I mean, but we look at these debts, we see them so large. Let's say your hospital bill is $20,000. That's a large hospital bill. And I can't remember where I read a story recently of this guy whose father took him out to eat for a celebration. And he said, "Well, Dad, what are we celebrating this today? What are we celebrating?" And he said, "Well, we're celebrating me paying off your hospital bills." Did you read it somewhere too?
That was Brother Ruben.
Brother Ruben, that's what it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Brother Ruben, his dad took him out to eat, and his dad was like 50 years old at this point in time or something like that. And Ruben was like 25. He said, I think it was because there's complications with his birth and stuff like that. And his dad worked all those years, 25 years, to pay off that hospital bill. It may take that long for some bills. Most, I found in my experience, and I've had lots of experience with bad debt, I've been very foolish with my money early on in life. Like I said, I wasn't taught those things. It was not an excuse, but I was very foolish with my money. And I found that credit card companies, they'll work with you. You tell them, listen, I can't afford that amount a month. They'll default you, and they will stop the interest from gaining on your amount. Because if you owe $5,000 and the interest is accumulating every single month, it's going to keep on going up. It's never going to go down, especially if you can't pay the minimum to pay for the actual interest that's hitting it every month. But most times they'll work with you, and they'll get to the point where they'll let you pay so much per month, and you'll pay them off eventually. You know, hospital bills, we talked about Ruben's dad, same thing with him. And so, these things can be paid off. It just may take a lot of time. And that's why you shouldn't put yourself in that position in the first place. Like I said, we can't go back and erase what we've done wrong. But if you haven't done those things yet, like I have done, don't do it. Don't put yourself in that position where you're going to owe lots of money over a long period of time. It's not a good. It's we read in Proverbs 22. You're a servant to the lender now. You're in bondage. You can't get out of it. So, okay. Anyone else? You want to add something else, brother? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, as far as being a good steward of what the Lord gives us, is sometimes we'll get a donation to go towards a certain cause or a certain outreach. And we are going to be held accountable to how we handle that. Like when I was traveling around on the road, someone would give to my ministry. I made sure that the majority of that money went into the gas tank. And as far as what I ate very little off of that.
Yeah.
Most of everything went into the gas tank to get to the preaching places I needed to get to, because that's what they were giving towards. They were giving towards the preaching.
Yeah.
Recently I've gotten a donation for going to Europe. Now, I have some bills that need to be paid, but I can't spend that money on those bills. I must spend it on the trip to Europe, because that's what it was given for. So when we're given sums of money in the body of Christ, we need to make sure that we're good stewards and we put it in the right direction instead of using it in other ways. Because if I were to use the money I have now to pay off all my bills, then I can't go to Europe, and the person that gave me the money to go to Europe
knows you lied.
It's like I stole from them.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful that we're good stewards and that we put the money that's for certain goals to that goal only, and not to other things.
Yeah, I mean, if you were saying to somebody, okay, well, I'm going to put addition on my house, okay, and you tell people about it and they give towards that, and you decide to use that money to go out and buy a TV, or you go out and use that money just to go out to eat. Or maybe it's just for whatever you want to use it for, but you don't use it for what you say you're going to use it for. To that person, you don't seem trustworthy anymore.
Right.
And if that happened to me, if someone was doing the money I gave them, I wouldn't want to give them anymore. Because they're not using it, they don't have any consideration as to what they asked for that money for. And I've seen people do that, where they've asked for money for a certain purpose, and they haven't used it for that purpose, even though I may have given to it, or other people may have given towards it. And whatever it is, the purpose that they're going to give it, that you were supposed to be giving towards, it dematerialized and never came to pass. It's not trustworthy. It's not being honest. So yeah, it's need to, whatever money God gives you, you need to use it honestly and be a good steward over it, and do with it what you are expected to do with it. Yeah, that's a good point. Anything else from anyone else?
Well, one last thing is when you open up with the talents, one thing that is, I saw is that the increase. So we should always be looking for ways to, whatever the Lord does bless us with, to try to increase it, to invest it in things that are going to make money.
Yeah.
So we're supposed to be good investors.
Yeah.
With what the Lord gives us.
Good investor of your time, good investor of who you're going to disciple, good investor of where you're going to preach the gospel, good investor of how you use your money. Yes, a good investor of all those things.
We're expected to multiply.
If I only have so much time a day and I plan, well, I'm going to disciple one person during this time frame, and I have 5 different people to pick from. And I see this person is kind of lazy, this person I kind of have to chase after him, this person over here is kind of distracted by things, but this person over here is really on fire, really devoted, really wants to get at it. Guess who I'm going to spend the most time with? That person. And so we need to invest all our things that God gives us wisely. Jesus did that. It wasn't that he saw something lacking in the other 9, but he picked 3 to spend more time with than the other 9. And for good reason. They were going to be the leadership of the church. Okay, anything else?